Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mike Cushman, and welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. Right. Okay, so a bit of sad news, first of all. Ailing councilor Wayne Campbell is resigning.
Yes, unfortunately, Wayne has pretty serious health issues. He got a leave of absence, I think, for the month of January, and he has indicated to the council that he has to step down. Wayne Council has been part of the council for 28 of the last 40 years, roughly, and he's been a mainstay. He ran for mayor back in 2000. What I can't remember when he was up against Salsi.
Okay.
And then he washed his hands of
I don't remember that, but yeah.
He washed his hands of politics in, I think, 2006 and was persuaded to come back into politics in 2014 by Mayor Wayne Diodati. Now, so that's a very sad thing. Kind of an icon of Niagara Falls. He's been around for a very long time. He's been a rough around the edges type of guy with a big heart. That's how they describe him.
Yep.
And
probably right. I wouldn't agree with a lot. There's many things I wouldn't agree with him on, but I think he's done a good job over the years.
Sure. Well, he's had the interest of Niagara Falls at heart.
Yeah.
He himself has had some serious tragedy, of course, with his daughter dying all too young.
And I think that drove him to some extent in the later years.
Yeah, that's quite possibly. He was a big proponent of the sort of transitional housing that's in the old Carnegie Library on Victoria Avenue. He was part of that, taking the old library, that building, and turning it into transitional housing. As a matter of fact, it bears his name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an important thing. Okay, no comments about that. No thoughts about Wayne Campbell, guys?
Well, Wayne Campbell, Wayne Campbell, well, she's like sort of been a fixture in city politics for a very long time, and he has now stepped down. I don't anticipate him coming back at all. His health concerns are too great. Even if he does survive them, I think that's probably it for him.
Yeah. And I wish him well. I wish him a speedy recovery. But yeah, I can't see him coming back to politics. But this is actually, politics, as they always say, is a weird thing.
I was talking to a friend of mine last night whose sister was a planner, a city planner for one of the big cities in Toronto, and he sort of transmitted to me her frustrations of being a planner and being a practical person, trying to plan a city, and then the politicians get a hold of it and ruin all her plans.
Yeah, well, that's city planning for you.
And then you have to come and redress the things that you put out in the first place. I think, but I don't know, our city itself, I don't know, our planning seems to be fairly reasonable, based on the facts that they have.
At the end of the day, a city planner, when the city comes and puts out their plan for 2050, the plan between now and 2050, so what's going on in the next 25 years, it's a look ahead with an idea that we've got these areas to do that, for industrial, these areas for residential, these areas for tourist, commercial, etc. They broadly marked them out. What they haven't done is you don't at that stage actually say, I want to design this building in here or put a shopping center in here. That's something that tends to come along with a individual planner.
Yeah, you have to have those areas set aside for those sort of things. You have to anticipate a few things, and of course, all things change depending on a number of factors. But to have a basic plan to which to follow, and which is logical, is the way to go. And as far as Wayne goes, well, who's going to replace him?
Yeah, Vince Carrio, by the looks of it, is who they're looking at. Vince is the next guy on the list anyway. Former city councillor, ousted in 2022. He finished in 10th place. And the city council have voted already to approach him to take the vacant seat.
Yes, sadly, yeah, and this is the only way we could avoid a by-election. Apparently, I don't know. They don't skip the next name.
They can go. They can if Vince Carrio were to decline, they would go to the next on the list.
Well, I'm not so sure. According to the article,
really,
they talked about a by-election. So,
I think they love to talk about a by-election, but
have to get the article up.
Yeah, and I think they love to talk about a by-election, but I think protocol would be that you keep going down the list.
Yeah, it says council approved the request and has see that. Okay,
I can't see Carrio not accepting, to be quite honest.
Former city councilor Vince Carrio to see if he will be willing to replace Campbell instead of the city holding a by-election. It says here.
Yeah. I don't see
the request and then former Vince Carrio, but it doesn't mention the next one after him.
No. And normally at the moment, well, it's unusual to have lost two councillors in a term, because remember, we lost both the Waynes.
Yes, and after the last election, it was pretty obvious that we were probably, well, all indications were we were going to lose at least one, probably two of them during the next, because it was well known that Wayne.
In a way, I'd have preferred they stood down at the last election, but I understand that both were proud city council members.
Yeah. Well, anyway, both have done the right thing by stepping down. Wayne Thompson and Wayne Campbell. Wayne Campbell, for sure, he doesn't need all this when he's going through
the health problems.
Health problems that he's facing.
I know.
And
and Wayne. Remember, Wayne Thompson also. He can no longer drive. That's the reason he resigned. And health-related problems there as well.
Yeah, and he was also being affected very much by his age.
Yeah,
that was very, very obvious. Anytime he spoke at council, everyone was very, very polite to him, and Mayor Diodati gave him lots of room to speak, and he struggled every time he did. So,
yeah, the last couple of years, that's very, very true. The last few years of Wayne Thompson, that's unfortunately, sadly true.
Yeah, so Wayne stepped down in his 80s, and now Wayne Campbell is doing. So we don't know I would assume to help the city to avoid a by-election, which can be a cost to the city. I'm sure that Carrio will step in until the next election, at least.
The interesting thing is, the last election, prior to the 22 election, Carrio had actually some thoughts about resigning, ending his political career at that point, according to some things that were published in the paper at that particular time. In fact, Carrio didn't put his nomination in until the final day.
Yes, and he didn't spend. Typically, Carrio was the biggest spender on his election,
and he hardly spent a thing.
Yeah, he didn't spend anything, I don't think, in the last. And that if he had put the efforts that he had previously with a lot of money, and he had a lot of money, so he could spend a lot of money on his election, that he got, if he did, he probably would have been able to move up a couple of points, but he did not.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so
he was kind of in a semi-retirement, a semi-retirement thought at the time, but kind of but threw his hat in at the last minute.
yes, and and he's never been a hugely popular council. As I said before, he's had to spend a lot of money to get on council.
Yeah.
And a lot more money than some of the other candidates there. So he's been able to sort of get on council with the strength of his money. And as he's performed in council, he was pretty much like Vince fell in line with the Diodati, Peter Angelo, and Savage, or Strange, pardon me, Strange. And so they were kind of the ominous old boys club. But I don't know. But he's still an experienced politician and knows his way around council. So he may step forward and at least.
Well, let's see what the next couple of days brings news-wise, right? I'm sure that's going to be the case.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Diodati would be reaching out to him, and they're obviously in line politically, and so, and it would be, in a sense, it could be a service to Niagara to spare us from a by-election, the cost of a by-election. 8816. Oh, I have a comment, but if you remember, Chad, I will leave it here. Leave it there. R.I.P. Chad. Chad?
Yeah, don't know.
Poor Lori's all alone. Just about. Yeah, she's like, everyone else is in the club, or at least mostly in the club.
Here's another thought for you, and I'm just going to throw this one in the. I'm going to throw this one in the pan, and just for the sake of it, by the way. So Ruth Ann Norrisdeg wins the election tomorrow. We lose another councillor.
Yeah.
Just to throw that one in the mix, by the way.
Yes, my feeling is Wayne Gates is probably pretty safe right about now, but you never know. The blue wave.
I'm not riding the blue wave. I'm not trying to buck the election in any way. I'm just playing the speculation game.
Yeah, that's and that's a very possible thing for sure. Then we would lose another council. Then we might be down to the numbers we should be. There's a lot of talk about, of course, one of the election issues that has come up recently is the rearrangement of municipalities in Ontario, and the PCs, of course, have had plans, or at least done research on how to realign certain municipalities because we are overgoverned. We have too many politicians and too much overlap. And I think Waterloo is the most egregious. They have way too many politicians per people, and this is causing a great deal of problems. And in an article that I posted, I don't know, a day or two ago, it says that you have situations where a road gets torn up to fix something, and then it has to be torn up again because the region and the municipality didn't communicate well enough, and all kinds of things like that. So there is a push for making municipalities more efficient and less overgoverned, but that issue has not come up in the election right now. Ford has not brought it up, although the opposition leaders are trying to bring it up. It's a pretty uncomfortable thing right now for the Ford government because they know that people are very don't like change, and they don't want to bring that issue up and bring controversy into the election at this particular time.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little while anyway. Just to throw the two names next on the list, by the way. Dan Moody got 4,104 votes. He's number 10 on the list. And Anne Radicic got 3,718 votes, and she's number 11 on the list.
Well, there you go. But I don't think, but the way the article read, is that if the next guy, which is Carriel, turns it down, it looks like a by-election. But I don't know.
I don't think so. I think it goes down the list.
Okay. Well, we'll find out, won't we?
That's how Carolyn Iannone got in. That's how many of the changes have occurred in the Falls.
Well, Carolyn Iannone, who also has been a very important face in politics here, she herself, when the city was still in a ward system, one of the councilors passed on, and Carolyn Iannone was in second place, and she didn't have a whole lot of votes. Same as Peter Angelo. I think he got in with like 100 votes or 100 or 200 votes.
Yep.
Back when it was the ward system. And so there are, do you really want a representative in there with only 100 and something votes? Do you really want a representative that only got about 3,000 votes?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but again, with a ward system, it is possible to win with under 1,000 votes in a ward system.
Yes, but this is not a ward system, so
no, it isn't.
So,
and again, the results are what the results are, and Mike Cushman has asked this many times. If nobody votes, what's the validity of an election?
Well, we're going to come to an election where the turnout might not be all that great.
Yeah, we got an election tomorrow where I'm predicting right now the turnout 39.6%.
I'll go up as far as 44%. Probably be, and the reason why I think it, and maybe because people are feeling rather patriotic right now, and they may just feel like it's their patriotic duty to go out and vote. So I think they're going to get better numbers than they did last time, but I can't say we could have a whole lot more. The individual races in individual areas, we might find certain counties or certain regions having more of a turnout, percentage-wise, where they have two candidates that are very popular. But here, we might even get a better turnout here in Niagara Falls too, because you have two well-known candidates, one a city councilor and one an incumbent.
Well, Kip Finn basically is saying Gates needs to go. The best way to ensure your voice is never heard is to have the NDP speaking for you. Right? Okay, and Mike Cushman says early polls indicates that it's less than last time.
Less than the last time, yeah.
Yep, that's what I said. Last time it was at 49%. I'm sticking my stake in the mound at 39.6.
I thought last time was 42%.
No, it was 40. It was about 48.
Oh, was it? Okay.
It was not that high. We were talking about how bad it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about how bad it was.
We'll see.
Yeah.
If you live in Niagara Falls, there's still one more place you can do advanced voting, and that's on Portage Road. If anyone's interested, today you can go ahead.
You can go today to Gales, I believe.
Gales also?
I got my voting card the other day, and I'm sure it said Gales all week, 10 till 8.
For advance? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up until every day until Thursday. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I got it wrong. But hey, I got the voting card. I took a glance at it Monday. Haven't looked at it again since.
I haven't got my voting card yet.
You haven't? Oh.
No.
Voter turnout will be closer to
44%.
says Kip. He's saying the blue wave is waking up. Well,
Yeah, I that was my number two, around 44%, I figured.
Yeah. That's we shall see. And I'm just saying that because I've seen too much voter apathy.
Yeah, but this is a little bit different condition because we all have there's a patriotic zeal basically building up, and so I think people are beginning to realize that they do have a voice in government around election time.
If it snows tomorrow, all bets are off.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't know. Talking about politics, we have another article here. It says that Polyev number or the PC numbers for the federal election are dropping fast.
Yeah. In fact, actually, this is actually okay. So let's pull that one back up next. So liberals. I've been looking at this because I've seen some liberals on Facebook saying, "Hey, we're in the lead. Where the federal parties are standing, we're at 40%, and the PC is falling fast." Trouble was, I couldn't actually find any polls which reflected those numbers. It's taken me a week and a half, but now I found one.
Yeah, the Ipsos
IPSOS.
Yeah.
Right?
So basically what they're saying is the honeymoon period that the Liberals are having now, once they got rid of Justin Trudeau, that was a good thing. And actually, oddly enough, him hanging on as long as he did is going to change the fortunes of the Liberals. We would have thought with him at the helm, they were going to have a devastation.
You'd think they were going to tank, wouldn't you?
Yeah, because they were so far behind. But because the Liberals have now taken away almost every one of the conservative talking points, the carbon tax, immigration, and all these other things. I watched the debate. I watched the debate, the Liberal English language debate last night, and you would have thought they were conservatives, the way they were talking a lot of the time.
Yeah,
they're taking all the conservative talking points, and of course, Polyev is sort of almost all his negativity thrown towards Trudeau is now kind of backfiring because he's sounding like a one-trick pony, basically. The carbon tax, and how bad JT was a leader. But once JT's out of the picture and the carbon tax is out of the picture, he was left with nothing. So he didn't expand his base of resistance towards the Liberals, and now he's stuck because they have now taken over all his talking points. Like I said, when I was listening to them up there, they sound very much like slightly right of center politicians.
Yeah,
so they're just kind of moving into his slot and taking that over, at least a lot of it. And now he's got to reconstruct the conservative mantra, basically, and find a way of coming back. Now he's got to look like he's a more positive guy rather than a negative guy, because he's always been negative this, negative this, and it was justified at the time. But now suddenly you have rising star Mark Carney. And
I think the advertising that's been attacking Mark Carney as he supported Trudeau's carbon tax and making it personal. I'm not so sure I appreciate that advertising.
Well,
and I'm being independent here. I'm trying to be as independent as I can be here.
Yeah, the idea that his idea, like Polyev's idea of personal assassination, would work with Trudeau, but it's not going to work with Carney. So, but Carney has a lot of answers. Like he vehemently supported the carbon tax right up till recently. All of a sudden, he realizes that's not going to make it. But he was a complete supporter of that. He himself has invested in oil and gas that do not in areas like Brazil that do not have the same sort of regulatory conditions that our own does. So there's a lot of things that are potentially hypocritical with Carney. But the fact of the matter is, once Carney gets in, and I expect him to be the next leader of the Liberal Party, he's gonna take advantage of this honeymoon period where the polls will switch, and he's going to call an immediate election.
That is the in speaking with a few Liberals, I would have to say that is their position, that they believe that within a month he's going to call an election.
It'll depend on how the polls, I think, look. But right now, there's that honeymoon period. And when we saw this happen in the United States when Kamala Harris first took over for the Democrats, there was this big surge.
She could have won on a landslide had the election been the very day she took over, right?
Yeah, she would quite definitely have won in the first weeks or months after she took over. But then things began to shift again. And Carney, because of the kind of politics we have, he can take advantage of that honeymoon period very much if he sees the polls tracking better his way. And even being smart, he would call it right away.
Yeah.
He may get a minority government, or he may force the Conservatives to have a minority government. Each way, it's better for him. Now, what's going to happen to that? And a big issue here with the Liberals is the NDP are vapid. They don't have anything. And so people who would normally vote for the NDP might vote for Liberal in the next election because Singh is just kind of a washout.
Well, and actually there is already speculation out there that Singh will lose his seat.
Oh boy.
Right. And by the way, it has to be pointed out that we're talking about a poll that was published by Ipsos, and of the late, when I've been looking at the polls, Ipsos have been slightly favoring the Liberals over the rest of the polls. Where, they have been the ones who have been following the kind of the Conservatives are not as far ahead as they would like to believe, right? Ipsos has been more liberal leaning in its polling. I'm not talking about a long history. I'm just talking about the last year or so.
This is kind of very unfortunate for Polyev. He's done a whole lot to raise up his party, bring it in. He's called it. More and more people have joined the Conservative Party under his tutelage, and he is now, unfortunately, in a situation where there is the X factor, basically, and that's a purposeful reference to Musk and Trump down below. That has changed all complexion and concerns of what normally the Canadian voter would look at.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. And remember, with anything about polls, what they tell you is any of the parties could be up or down 3% on any of the positions that they give. So this Ipsos poll is giving the Conservatives at 36%, Liberal at 38%, NDP at 12%, and Bloc at 6%. Bloc at 6% nationwide is meaningless. Is a meaningless poll position, right? Now, so that 36 could be as high as 39, or as low as 33, and that 38 could be as high as 41, or as low as 35.
Right? Yeah. So in normal times, we could even with Mark Carney at the helm, we could expect a majority government with Conservatives. But these are not normal times. Like I said, the X factor with the Trump patroller, the tariffs, kind of an existential threat to Canadian sovereignty. and you have an economist slash banker kind of dude, and the voice of the liberals has shifted way to the right.
Yeah.
When you start listening to them, they are talking conservative talking points.
Yep.
So it's going to be a rough ride for Poilievre. I still think he'll get at least a minority government.
Well, and a lot depends upon, you see, it's easy to look at, and it's easy to go out and stick a microphone in somebody's face and say, how you vote, if the general election were held right now, how would you be voting? Right? That's an easy peasy thing to do. What it's more difficult to see is that there are some seats whereby even if the Conservatives were leading by 15 points in the national polls, the Liberals would still pick up that seat in a landslide.
The thing is here is Conservatives, just like in the United States and previously here in Canada, when polling, the Conservative supporters are less likely to cooperate. And we found that in the United States, and we found that somewhat happening here in the last elections in Canada, where the Conservatives don't trust the pollers, they don't trust the media. We can see that here with Ruth Ann Newestag. She avoids the press and she avoids debates.
Yep.
So because they have a general feeling that the press and those people in the media are generally more left focused.
Yeah, it's been a conservative response across the polls across Ontario, and them leading massively. They got 50% in the polls, but but again, people like Ruth Ann Newestag and avoiding the press. Yeah, it's avoiding debates. It's interesting.
Yes. Yeah, very interesting. And we found this that in Verdun and in the St. Paul regions of by-election in Toronto, the candidates would not make themselves presentable to the available to the press.
Yeah.
They just avoided the press. And this is because of a general feeling among conservative supporters that the press is more left-leaning and more likely to be sort of more sympathetic to the left. And that turns out to be true because journalists and those who go through journalism and things like that quite normally have a left of center focus, and their opinions boil over into their reporting, even if they're supposed to be biased. So there is something to that, and I found that analysis comes from the left. Years ago, NPR had to struggle with its, and recently too, struggle with its particular take on politics, and it was roundly criticized within its own companies, basically, that they tend to be more left focused, so they have to put a big effort into being a little bit more objective. That's just, and conservatives all around North America, whether the States or Canada, maybe even Mexico, I don't know, have found that the press on the whole, the media on a whole, is less
sympathetic to conservatives.
Yes,
I get it. Yeah, I get it. And hey, I do understand that, but I also think a good politician is one who will take your question that would naturally lead to a superb answer if you were on the left, and would turn that around to suit whatever position they favored.
Well, as we saw with the liberal English language debate, they quickly took on a lot of conservative talking points and adopted them of their own. So that's wily of the liberals. Also, too, in our particular riding, because Ruth Ann Newestag refused to do a debate, that
made it null and void in a way. The whole debate became null and void, didn't it? Because she was not there.
Yeah, now she's probably following orders from the PCs. Don't get involved
Uh-huh.
in debates, and particularly being a newbie and all that. And we found that the PCs have removed themselves from debates all around
Yeah.
Ontario. It might not that might be not be a good strategy for Ruth Ann because she although
She
she's
needs to close in
reasonably
on
well
those.
known, yeah,
Yeah,
and the
she
fact
needs
that
to
she
close in
refused,
on those facts. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, she won't present herself to the public, may be negative consequences
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, so I'm just trying to see if why do you right? I'm just trying to see if I can grab the piece. Yep, you don't want to let me get there, do you?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this particular item. So what Chris Rieger said to me, what's the point in most instances anyway? Most moderators choose leftist policy issues and loaded questions that end up the debate debating with the debating candidate did to April Jeffs, like Grant LaFleche did with April Jeffs. So it places the candidate in an impossible position. That's what Chris is saying.
Yeah, and look at the debate we had a couple elections ago when when the moderator accused the block guy of being a racist. You remember
Yeah,
that? Really,
yeah,
she painted a dark picture of the guy, and he said, I think it was Legault said, "Already you've judged me. You've judged me with your question, right? You didn't. That wasn't a question. That was a judgment on me." I thought that was absolutely terrible, and I thought, who the hell allowed this moderator to do that? So the
yeah,
moderator herself had opinions that came out in her questions that made judgmental accusations towards Legault.
yeah. And I think
And
that's wrong.
yeah,
It's
uh,
poor moderation.
yeah,
Yeah, it's very poor moderation. That is right. And Chris has got a point. Chris Regis has a point. About that. I understand where he's coming from. I understand what his belief is with this and why why he's angry about it from the conservative viewpoint.
well, yeah. Certain news agencies, including Al Jazeera's of all things, Al Jazeera's had I don't know if they've gone ahead with it yet, but they wanted to make a part of their news agency in the United States as one that covered conservative talking points, kind of a forum for conservative talking points. Like I forget the name that they were going to call it. I don't think they went ahead with it just yet. But the whole idea was to try to balance their reporting to make it a little more objective. CNN has claimed that they have tried that, and although I don't watch any American news because it's all rubbish, particularly their opinions, it's always skewed. Doesn't matter if it's right or left. Fox is an utter joke, and CNN is not bad. Is a clown show when it comes to their opinions. So you have to look outside of the mainstream media to sort of pick and choose. You have to go to the buffet of news outlets that is available to you. And quite often, to get a good idea of what's really going on, you have to go outside the country and BBC
See
or
what other people look at us. Yeah, see what the other. Yeah, exactly. Because the press in the country is too close to it. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think we've had a good smattering on that. Anything else? I've got no further comments.
No, that's anyway. So, well, may the best man or woman win.
Yeah.
I think probably the inclination will be for for Wayne Gates, but there is this blue wave that's going through Ontario, and the whole idea that the other two parties, like the other two main parties, the NDP and Liberals, are just out to lunch. They just do not have a currency right now, and it's a smart political move by Ford. He bribed us with $200, and as I've vehemently said, I will not, I cannot be swayed by a bribe of $200. It has to be at least 300.
There we go. Yeah. I haven't got my $200 yet, so hey, I'm not bribed. All right. Moving on. This weekend, the Niagara Police Service did a R.I.D.E spot checks in Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, and there have been 14 drivers required to provide samples of their breath for analysis, and there have been suspensions as a result.
Yeah. So sadly, there's 3, but happily, there's only 3.
Yeah.
They stopped 200 people, and of those 200 people, only 3. You only have to go back a couple of decades, and that would have been 30 or 13.
But as the police point out, impaired driving remains the leading criminal offense causing death in Canada.
Yes, it still is a problem, and with cannabis in the mix now, it could be even more problems. But I tell you, I think the biggest problem with car accidents now, or at least traffic problems that I find, I almost got killed twice because somebody was on their phone and went through a stop sign, and you could see them looking down at their phone or on the screen, right? So I don't know if I would have been killed, but I would have been in a major accident.
Yeah.
And I've been in a major accident. Believe me, I don't want to do another one, So it took me out of commission for 6 months. But I think phones are as much of a problem as alcohol and cannabis right now. And when you only have 3 out of the 200 they stopped, that's kind of encouraging. It's a little discouraging that you even have 3. But a lot of them probably slipped through because they just denied having anything. So the cops will pull you over and ask you if you've had anything to drink or any cannabis or any.
Yeah, but a lot of the reason for pulling you over is they can smell it.
No, they pull you over automatically. It's a R.I.D.E program.
I know. But what I'm saying is that they're using their senses. They can smell if there's alcohol.
Yeah, once you're pulled over.
Yeah, once you're pulled over. Yeah.
And you roll down the window, and and suddenly they smell a lot of Lysol spray, and your mouth is full of gum. Yeah, well, okay, you might be suspect, but they're going to ask you, have you had any cannabis or alcohol that day? And if you just say no, and they don't have anything really to go on, then you'll slip through. But most people who've had more than a couple will kind of indicate it, that there is some indication, and the threshold is pretty low. These people may have just got the suspensions that you get with having 5% alcohol in your bloodstream, which is pretty low. It's like a beer and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think the message is getting out there. Don't do it.
Yeah. So anyway, it's good that that's what they found. I still think that unfortunately for the police, they're going to have to ramp up, find some ability to some kind of way of determining if someone is distracted by a telephone.
Yeah, that's another thing entirely. That's another,
because you have a screen that you can see. Yeah, so in the car itself, there'll be a screen, and if you're talking to somebody, you can see their face. Somebody can communicate. You're bored, so you go to your phone and you get, YouTube up there, and you're kind of keeping one eye on YouTube and one eye on the traffic. You can tell too because people are wandering all over the road. Like
Yeah.
they're not.
Oh yeah.
My biggest concern in the '90s were how fast people were driving, and now it's kind of like, where are they driving? They're driving slow and going back and forth. How many times have been behind somebody going down Dorchester Road or Thurlstone Road, and they're going 40 kilometers per hour, and they're kind of drifting here and drifting there and drifting there. A couple of Sundays ago, when I was going to the studio for bingo, I was doing the computers
Yeah.
on the bingo. I was behind a guy that hit his brakes every time he went over 40 kilometers an hour. So he'd lunge forward, hit the brakes, come back, and then he'd kind of do this sway kind of thing. I have a feeling that he was half looking at his phone and half looking at the road.
Yeah, the 40K being, if I don't exceed 40, then I'm not going to be pulled over.
Yeah, I
Mistaken
guess.
belief, right? Mistaken belief.
It was like looking at a strobe light being behind him. I just kind of made distance, got way back, and
Yeah.
and
What else can you do? Because your thinking is that the guy's either going to end up in the ditch or that looks like I've had a temporary outage on my internet.
oh, that's what that was.
Yeah, it just blipped. And it's like nothing at all. Weird, that's for sure.
Well, we
And
still have aging infrastructure in our, like it was more serious about 20 or so years ago. Our aging infrastructure, we would get spikes and low points in our
yeah.
in in our in our power, and that might have done it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I got a friend who goes around with a meter and he checks his power intake, and it varies in his particular place.
Yeah.
So he could go down to 100 and then back up to 120, and
It is
it
so
blip.
weird. Yeah. It is so weird. But anyway, I think we just came to the end of what was on R.I.D., the suspensions, etc. Now we're moving on to obviously yesterday it started raining. A lot of that snow and ice has melted, but the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is keeping an eye on local waterways, and they're saying at the moment they don't expect that to lead to flooding issues.
Yeah, they do say though, stay away from waterways. They are looking at the waterways that mostly flood or are mostly of concern, and yet even
Yeah.
without the meltwater that we've had from the snow runoff,
Well,
it has not swelled the rivers badly enough to be of some danger. But they do warn, stay away from them, because particularly where you were walking across the ice on rivers and lakes and that, now you have to be a lot more concerned because that ice is a lot softer, even in places where it's thick.
yeah.
So stay away, stay off the ice,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
unless you really know what you're doing. and have been somebody who's lived there for a very long time in that area and know the ice as well, and
Yes, stay
also
off it.
stay
Yeah.
away from rivers because they have swollen, and it's going to make the ground around it a little more difficult, and there is going to be increased flow. So there is an element of caution there. But for now, it's not so bad. So thank you for the MPCA for keeping an eye on that for us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you were saying there's a rise in water level in some in the area, but we're keeping an eye on it. Without significant melt and significant rain at this point, we're not too concerned, right? So if it continue, it's not raining today, but it will continue melting today because we've got positive temperatures today.
Yes. So so that and until Saturday, I think it's going to start to freeze again on Saturday. So
yeah. And at the moment, my driveway is just an ice rink.
it is.
Yep.
Just put on your skates, brother, and skate to your car.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's like walking out there. I'm walking more like a penguin than anything else.
Yeah.
Don't put your foot more than a foot in front of the other 1 foot more. Don't make wide steps. Don't dolly steps on everything. Right.
Well, I still remember, like, one of my earliest memories is skating on the sidewalk learning how to skate on the sidewalk because it was iced over in Scarborough. So we could hold ice here. This year, you probably could have had a backyard rink.
Yep. Oh yeah, most certainly.
But more cold weather to come, and as we reported yesterday, a changing weather sort of pundit who got the Order of Canada basically was advising farmers. The farmers themselves asked him for his opinions and his guidance of what the weather will do over the next 20 or 30 years and how then to get prepared for what kind of crops they should do. So, but that may mean we have even more snow. As you remember, years ago, they said, "Aha, global warming isn't a thing because look how much it's snowing. They have record snowfalls in Antarctica." Well, that was an indication things were actually warming up because Antarctica is deadly dry.
Yeah,
and if you have snowfall,
and some parts of Antarctica haven't had, until that snowfall hadn't had any rainfall or snowfall for like 3 million years.
Yeah, so the increased amount of snow meant there was more water vapor in the air, enough so that they could get down to even saturate the Arctic. So yeah, whatever reason you want to use about climate change, it is happening. The farmers themselves have noticed it. The Inuit have noticed it up in the north because they're finding fish they've never seen before. And the fish that comes from more southern areas are moving into the north. And we're going to get into a real bitter conflict because we have the Northwest Passage go through Canada, and every country in the world is saying, well, no, that's an international passageway. That doesn't belong to you. As we remember under I think it was Reagan, he pulled that stunt on us.
Yeah. Well, and Northwest Passageway is becoming more open to, to use 12 months of the year. Yeah. Okay, so then we've got this other question about the 25% tariffs start next week, but Alcoa is warning Trump that aluminium tariffs will cost 100,000 US jobs.
Yeah, so obviously Trump's got somebody behind the scenes that really does know what they're doing. Trump control and do these kind of things. There's a lot of speculation that he's only doing them in order to get the best deal possible, like the last best deal possible he got. the best deal ever made. He claimed back in 2018 about the USMCA. Couldn't be better, the best of all times, and now he doesn't like it. He says we're taking advantage of him. Well, how could you be taking advantage of him? Well, this is your deal, you know. So he's trolling big time, and obviously the American aluminum companies, Alcoa of one, have making significant investments for the United States market outside of the United States, Canada, Australia, and Iceland. Iceland, of course, because they have ample electric power, and you need electric power, ample amounts of electric power to make aluminum cheap. Quebec has it, Iceland has it, and evidently somewhere in Australia they have it.
Yep.
So the big American aluminum companies have made that investment to secure supplies for the United States in more inexpensive supplies.
Well, he's talking about 20,000 US aluminium industry jobs and a further 80,000 jobs in sectors that support that industry.
Yes, and he's saying the tariffs won't work in converting, bringing aluminum production back to the United States.
No.
First of all, you need bauxite, and we don't have any much here in Canada. I don't think they have huge supplies of that either in the United States. So the bauxite has to come from probably Brazil or some other place like that. And then what needs for the refinement of that bauxite into aluminum, you have to have huge amounts of electrical power, and the cheaper it is, the better. That's why the American companies have invested outside their own country for those aluminum supplies.
Yeah.
You cannot. One of the aims of the tariffs is to bring back production within the United States' borders, but it would have to be a tariff that is guaranteed over many years before the aluminum companies will reinvest in production in the United States. Meanwhile, they do take the aluminum they get from other countries and then do things with it.
And talking about bauxite production, right? We're talking about the world leaders is Australia, Guinea, China, Brazil, India, Indonesia, Jamaica, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Kazakhstan, Vietnam, Turkey, and Greece.
Yeah, we used to get most of our bauxite from Jamaica in this country, but you just said Australia has bauxite. Well, that's obviously the reason why the American aluminum companies have invested in Australia, because they have ample supply of bauxite.
Yeah. Well, they're the biggest producer in the world. They've got, well, I don't know. Guinea has the largest reserves, but Australia is the largest producer.
So there you have it. In order to attract that production or refining the bauxite into the United States, the companies would have to be guaranteed high tariffs on incoming aluminum for many years to come. Nobody's going to start putting investments if the tariffs are going to be taken off.
Yeah.
And presumably Trump will obey the Constitution and leave in 2028, and that may bring in a different administration that has a different idea on tariffs. Plus the fact that he might just be trolling and trying to force us into
I think he's trying to force us into a deal.
Yeah, it could be, but you never know with that guy. He goes day by day. What's it happening? You know, he's going to put the tariffs on us a month ago and decided not to, and now he's going to do it again. It's pushing his allies away from him. Basically, it's got us talking to the European Union. It's got us talking to Mexico. We didn't want to talk to Mexico before because of their trade relationship with China, particularly when it came to electric cars and how they were sneaking electric cars into the U.S. and Canada too. And but now it's forced Mexico and Canada together. You're probably going to find a lot of planes going back and forth to Mexico City, where we talked to Sheinbaum, who is the Mexican president. We'll see. But whether he's just trolling for the meantime to get a better deal later or whatever, that's nobody knows what he's going to do, and he changes his mind day by day. And the truth is a distant thing for Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Trump when he says that we are being really taken advantage of by the Canadians and the Mexicans. Well, who made the last deal?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Okay, what you're saying. And Kip Finn is saying Canada used tariffs to their advantage in the 50s, didn't they? For auto manufacturing, he believes, right?
Well, the auto pact,
Probably right.
the auto pact, yeah, but the U.S. had tariffs too. So the auto pact was an effort by the big three to reduce the inconveniences of cross-border manufacture. So the auto pact was an early free trade deal specific to the auto industry. And the auto pact would say that they viewed anything built in Canada or anything built in the States as built in one place. So Canada, the border between Canada and the U.S. was non-existent for auto parts beginning in the early '60s. It was, they actually elements of that deal were used in the first free trade deals.
Yep.
That whole idea that there be no tariffs on car parts and cars.
All right. Okay. We're at 8:03. I don't know that there's anywhere else we can really go to right now. We'll look at the other articles, I guess, tomorrow.
Yes, and I think we just got to buckle down for some hard times coming up. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in the. It's very interesting what's happening in the elections right now, and it couldn't have been worse for Polyev right now to have Trump doing all this trolling to shift the focus away from our long-lived nine-year government that has.
We lost you, Dave. I don't know. I think we're there. I think we've lost Dave. Yeah, and I think we'll call it quits at that point. What happened, Dave? Yep, I thought we'd call it quits at that point. We've added too much technical difficulties today. It was weird, but yeah, we will call it quits. And I hope you guys have a great day. And with all of the technical difficulties, I'm surprised anybody's still there. And Dave has got his on the screen that I'm seeing. Dave's got standing there with his jaw open. So I'll be saying goodbye to you, and we'll be back tomorrow, 7 a.m. And have a great day, everybody.